And well, what happens when the two largest economies in the world are locked in a trade showdown? The US-China trade war has reached a new, potentially dangerous level. My colleague Kim Karsoria brings you more details on how other countries are dealing with the Trump effect.
Now, in 2024, the United States recorded its largest deficit with China, standing at almost $300 billion. In 2025, the U.S. already faces a $122.7 billion deficit. That's a 6.1% increase from the previous year. The U.S. imported over $400 billion in goods from China, while exports to China total around $278.5 billion. This growing gap has fueled tensions as Trump asserts that China's trade surplus is funding its military, something he's determined to curb. The impact of China's retaliatory tariffs is already being felt across several key U.S. industries. Boeing, Micron and U.S. agricultural sectors are some of the hardest hit by this. The U.S. semiconductor industry, which exports billions worth of chips to China, is particularly vulnerable, of course. On the agricultural front, critical U.S. exports like soybeans, sorghum and poultry are facing new tariffs of 44 to 49%. With China being the largest buyer of U.S. agricultural products, these increased tariffs threaten to destabilize the market. The United States and China are deeply intertwined in this global trade war, and their escalating tensions have far-reaching consequences. China controls over 60 to 70% of the global rare earth mineral production, which is crucial for high-tech industries, including those in the United States. Meanwhile, the U.S. remains the world's largest economy, but the growing trade deficit with China puts pressure on both nations. The ripple effects are already being felt, as I mentioned, as tariffs now affect 63% of U.S. goods exported to China. As both countries dig in their heels, the future of global trade hangs in the balance, with both sides facing significant economic consequences.
All right, to discuss more from Hong Kong, we are being joined by Andrew K.P. Leung, Chairman and CEO, Andrew Leung International Consultants and Investments Limited, and a prominent international China specialist. Thank you so much for joining on the show today.
Thank you.
Well, let me first begin by asking you, how do you see Trump's escalation of the trade war with China?
Well, I think that President Trump just said that if China doesn't withdraw its retaliatory measures and tariffs, he will impose a further 50% tariffs on the already very high tariffs imposed on China, totaling 54%. So 54% plus another 50% would be 104%. However, let's not forget, as you pointed out in your slides, the United States market has more and all the supply of all the daily commodities and products depend on China much more than China depends on the United States. Apart from, of course, as you pointed out in your slides, China possession of rare earths, and the rare earths goes into all sorts of high-end, high-technology products, including the military. And of course, as again you pointed out, China is one of the largest buyer of U.S. agricultural products. Now, plus the fact that, of course, the President Trump has already highlighted the importance of the role China's play in stopping the fentanyl kind of tsunami in the United States, affecting a lot of lives of young people taking these drugs. So if China refuses to cooperate, that would be a multi-pronged stranglehold on the United States. And also, if you go to the United States, you go to the supermarkets, almost all of the products are made in China. And even though products not made in China, China's embedded in them, in most of them, in terms of rare earths, components, parts, and various other ingredients. included in a variety of products. So I think that, of course, Trump probably knows this. And of course, there is no way that Beijing would back down, having done all, prepared itself since Trump 1.0. Because when Trump first won the White House, President Xi already mandated the country to prepare for eventualities, focusing on self-reliance in technology and also rechecking the economy, pivoting towards internal consumption and services, but rather than reliance on exports, but still maintaining its dominance in manufacturing. Because after all, China's the largest trader and manufacturer par excellence. China is the largest trading partner for 128 countries around the world, compared with only 58 for the United States. And if you talk about manufacture, all the bigger cranes, apart from the various consumer products, all the heavy machinery, you see the container ports, you see all the drilling, heavy equipment, they're now all made in China. So I think that China is prepared to really defend its own interests, but of course holding out olive branch, because there's no winner if there is an escalating trade war. Right. As in the case of American allies, they're all saying they don't want a war, they want negotiation. But I think China wants to negotiate on an equal footing without giving up its sovereignty.
Right, and that being said, at this point, does this just look like Trump's ego is playing out, or does he look like a strong businessman to you? All right. Well, I'll just repeat my question. Now, at this point, since you mentioned that China does not want to back down, and if Trump does know this, then is it just Trump's ego playing out, or he's trying to portray a tough businessman? How do you look at that, and will that backfire?
Well, China has already retaliated in full by lopping 30% tariffs, reciprocal tariffs from China's perspective on American imports. But also it's now has put a number of U.S. entities in the entity list, subject to various restrictions. And as I said, I mean, Beijing has already made it quite clear. They're not going to give to be bullied. They're prepared to negotiate, but they negotiate on equal terms. And then China hopes for a win-win situation, whereby China is prepared to address some of the United States' legitimate concerns. For example, if they want security on certain products, I think that Beijing would accommodate that. If they want certain restrictions on certain Chinese goods, I think that China would be prepared to do that. But what we're seeing now is an indiscriminate tariffs on the whole range of products, not the whole range, but a full range of products, and then affecting, in fact, the livelihood of American consumers more than China. As I said, the reliance on by China on the United States as an export market has declined from something like 18% in 2018 to something like less than 14%. China can always export its products to other destinations, including especially the Global South. And even now, the relationship between the European Union, the European countries with China have been recalibrated because of the Trump unreliability as an ally.
And now, that being said, if this escalates further and with this tit-for-tat strategy, how will this influence, or what does this full-blown trade war mean for the world?
Let's not forget that it was President Trump who suggested that he would like to beat President Xi And then he was also has alluded to a joint celebration of their two birthdays, his own birthday and President Xi's birthday, both coinciding in June, perhaps in Mar-a-Lago. So I think that even though now, I mean, he's saying that all the meetings suggestions are off, but it's more like bluffing. But if you look at what he's doing to the rest of the world, I mean, he's imposing tariffs on the entire world, including some very poor countries. For example, in Madagascar, they're selling vanilla and agricultural products and also some minerals. And they're a very, very poor country with a GDP per capita of $4,500 US dollars per annum. And there is no way that poor countries like Madagascar can rebalance their trade by buying expensive American products like a Tesla car. So I think that this is, and also, ridiculously, the American tariffs are even imposed on some penguin islands in the Antarctica. The reason given by this spokesman was that, well, they want to stop the loopholes. So I think that the whole credibility of American leadership has lie in tatters because he's targeting not only adversaries like China, he's lumping on the high tariffs on traditional allies in Europe and Canada and Mexico and South Korea. So I think that this is a quite an unrealistic a kind of belief that somehow tariffs will solve all American problems, because Trump wants to address the Americans' double deficits. He wants to reduce the trade deficit just by tariffs, and he wants to reduce the budget deficit by using Elon Musk Department of Government Efficiency. And abolishing a lot of the institutions, mostly in the Democratic camp, like the USAID and also Voice of America and so on. So I think that this is, again, he's mixing his own politics with quite an unrealistic and far-fetched idea that somehow you can use tariffs to threaten the whole world and bend the whole world to his needs.
Absolutely. And you pretty much explained every part of this whole trade war, if we could call it. But of course, it's yet to see if Trump does look at the market, which he does not really consider yet, but if he's going to look for a negotiation. But thank you so much for joining on the show and giving your perspective. It was a pleasure talking to you.